Hi, I'm Derek Asham. Welcome to the stream. This is our pre-show where we have a chance to talk about some of the issues of the day. As always, we'll be going live on our broadcast in just a few minutes. And remember, you can stay with us after the main broadcast show to come right back here at stream.aljazeera.com to continue the conversation in the post-show. I'm joined today by Ahmed and Clotilde. Great to see you both. Ahmed, what's been going on in the world?
In the world. I'm going to give it to you all right now.
I know, right?
So one thing that's been going on is talk about Google trying to encroach a bit on Facebook's, I guess, monopoly of this social networking game, right? They have over 700 million users, and Google has released Google+. So actually, let's just play this little video that Google put together. Essentially, what Google+ is it's a way for Google to tap into the fact that they have such a advantage in terms of their search database and how big it is, and to incorporate that into an actual community and social network. So right here, they're talking you through this thing called circles, which we've heard from a lot of people as a way that you can kind of share information and, you know, socialize with people online, but kind of choose what kinds of people you want. You can make a list of family, friends, coworkers, friends who are perhaps more open-minded, friends who are perhaps more narrow-minded. What do you make of it? I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yeah, I've heard of it. There are two questions, though. The first is, like, who is using it?
Right.
Who wants to get out of Facebook? Seriously. Like,
Yeah.
And so who is using it?
Because you're saying it's not different enough. Like, because people use Facebook and Twitter, but...
I didn't use it because I didn't get an invite. So I don't know how to use that.
Absolutely.
So it's great, it's new, but I don't use it. And the thing is that there is also, like, one of my interrogation is about this. Is, you know, like, everyone is talking about Google trying to get onto Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay. Why would they do this? And is there really a chance that Facebook will?
Yeah. Well, you know, this is an interesting question because we were just talking a little while ago about the upcoming sale of MySpace. And I remember a moment when MySpace, you know, we had seen Friendster and everyone was like, oh, this is the greatest thing. Then MySpace came out and they were just the best thing ever. And I think News Corp paid something like $500 million for MySpace.
Right.
Now they're asking for $100 million to sell it, but it's looking like they're only going to get 35 to 40 million.
Yeah.
So could it be possible that each social network, maybe they have a life cycle? Maybe, you know, what we think of the role that Facebook plays today, it might not play 5 or 10 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, it's... Oh, go ahead.
There is something I think that Facebook and Google are different in that way, even if they are trying to, like, you know, go into each other with their search and the social networks and everything. Facebook is ready just to connect everyone, no matter the cost.
Yeah.
They'll go to China.
Yeah.
They've already said they are giving too much free speech. They'll go there. Google is less than this. So the only thing I could really see where there is, like, Google Plus is an alternative to Facebook is that Google is, like, has already thought about this, at least tried.
Yeah.
And Facebook, there is no compromise for this.
Well, you know, you mentioned that you didn't get an invite yet, and I didn't. I don't think you did.
I haven't had one either.
But the reason I mentioned it
is guess we're not on the ends.
Yeah, someone who happens to be on the ends is Jillian C. York, and she, as she would, anyone would, wrote a blog post about her experience. Now, I'm not going to talk us through everything, but there's a couple things worth highlighting. One thing she said, so you can see this is a screenshot she took, and apparently Google Plus makes really great use of screenshots, including allowing people to report spam. So apparently this is something called Google Hangouts, where you can hang out with up to 10 people, I believe. So here she is hanging out with someone. Yeah, so it looks cool, you know. But the one issue then is, like, why would you report spam if these are your friends? Like,
so this is a question she brought up, which I read, and I had some thoughts on it. Because basically she's saying, look, if I'm in there with 10 people, and you could report if one of them delivers spam.
Right here, this is the page, yeah.
Okay, so first of all, people hack anything and everything. So there's no reason why somebody should not be able to hack into your little chat group, your hangout in Google. And if they're doing so, you might want to report, like, hey, somebody's interfering here. Additionally, you might be in there with some people you know, but maybe a friend of a friend of a friend is in there too, whom you don't like or who you feel like is doing something that is.
So you might as well just do it on the down low. Like you could discreetly report them.
Well, you could report. You could do it. You could snitch. Exactly.
Right,
you could snitch if you want to.
Right.
Or you could tell them directly. But I think that it probably is more of a useful tool than people are giving credit to. Because I can think of 1,000 times when I'm on the web every day when I'm like, wow, if I could just go to the internet gods and tell them so-and-so is a jerk, please kick them off the web.
We don't talk that much online. You don't have to be pretending that we do. You want to report me. No, I'm kidding.
No doubt.
But one quick thing I wanted to say that Jillian mentioned, because this is a bit self-referential. It's okay. You'll forgive us. This is the pre-show. She says another feature of the site is the stream. I wonder
great.
what Al Jazeera will think of that name. So perhaps we are on to Google's plans before they made them public.
I think that Al Jazeera will think very highly of Google's stream if they will send any of the stream members an invite to Google+.
Yeah.
Hint, hint.
Well, that's how she ends it, right? She says at the very end, sorry, I'm just going to find it here. She says, the last line is, she says that it actually, while she was using this, like her MacBook started to make a lot of noises. She didn't feel like the processor was keeping up, at the pace. And then she said,
I'm sorry, I'm just curious. It says that some people seem to like this. Whose name is that?
Oh, right. Yeah, forgive me.
So this is objective journalism.
I'm quite impressed. Yeah, I'm quite impressed with Jillian's assessment.
No doubt.
No, exactly. And speaking of it, she ends it with, now if only Google would send invites to the rest of my friends.
Indeed.
Which is precisely why I did like it. Because I'm waiting for them to do that.
So I have another question, though. This goes back to what Clotilde was saying about, why would people want to be leaving Facebook? I mean, do you think that we're going to get to a point where there are so many social networks that our lives become increasingly fragmented, depending upon what networks you're a part of, it will influence who you hang out with?
Maybe it will, yeah. Maybe just you will choose the network depending on the policy of the firm, of the company, maybe it will be that different and that you can actually do this.
I mean, I think it should, to be honest with you. I think competition is always a good thing, within reason. I don't necessarily think it has to be one or the other. And maybe this will make Facebook make some changes, because when you're leading and you don't have anybody challenging you, you don't really need to change, you know what I mean? You don't need to...
I agree.
Yeah.
I think you can get a little bit lazy, a little bit complacent.
Yeah.
Hopefully this will help them to up their game.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the one thing, though, is Google has started a couple of new projects. It's like every year they've got something special pumping up.
Yeah.
But we don't know how many of them stick. I mean, what happened to Google Wave?
Yeah, this is their third attempt. Remember Google Buzz?
Yeah, exactly.
And you know what? At the very beginning, Google was supposed to be ad-free. It was the principle and the first proposal they wrote.
Okay, so, well, there you go. Obviously, things are changing. We want an invite, Google. So anyway, thanks for being a part of the pre-show. We're about to go live on our broadcast. We'll see you on air. Hi, I'm Derek Ashong, and you are now in The Stream, a social media community with its own daily TV show. We're bringing you stories that are ongoing, global, and sourced from social media. Today, Thai elections take a beastly turn, and Afghan garbage goes viral. As always, our digital producer, Ahmed Shihab Eldin, is here looking out for your feedback. And joining us on the couch today is Clotilde Lecoz, a journalist and the Washington director for Reporters Without Borders. Clotilde, you were in charge of the Internet Freedom Desk when you were working in Paris. What were you doing there?
It was monitoring the situation for online freedom. So it was most of the time talking about online censorship and how the government uses tools to censor their own people, and also the involvement of the different companies in sponsoring it.
So I'm really glad that you're here with us today, because we've got our second story today is dealing with these issues of internet freedom and how people are going around some of those. Be very interested to get your thoughts. Thanks so much for being with us. We always want to know what stories you're following as well. You can always share them with us by tweeting us using the hashtag AJStream.
I'm Michael Ostrolink, and I'm using hashtag Libya to follow the constitutional debate about U.S. military involvement in Libya, and I'm in the stream.
As Thailand gears up for general elections on July 3rd, candidates are now more than ever turning to social media to reach voters. The ruling Democrat Party is facing off against the red-shirted Pheu Thai, the opposition party controlled by former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. Since voting is mandatory, a third group opposed to both parties is asking voters to tick the vote no box on the ballots because they believe the current political system is corrupt and needs to be cleansed. Let's take a look really quickly at one of these rallies that was taking place quite recently. This is happening in Thailand. You can see the vote no posters in this feature animals dressed as politicians because they see all the options as wild beasts, quote unquote. With 10 million Facebook users in Thailand, candidates are now using their own pages as a medium to publish photos, video chats, and campaign information. And if you'll take a look at my screen, I actually want to share with you one of these websites of a Thai politician. Now, opposition candidates have even reached the point where they're calling on the election committee to stop current Prime Minister Abhisit Wejjajiwa from using his Facebook page as a platform to attack their members. Joining us now via Skype from Bangkok is Saksit Sayasumbat. He's a Thai blogger and journalist. Saksit, thank you so much for joining us. Is Thai media, are the Thai politicians using social media in new ways in this election, or is this something that you've seen before?
I've seen this before in other countries, and also, especially in the United States. You think that maybe social media is something, of course, something new, something exciting that candidates will use. And it's something very new in this election in Thailand as well, yes. But the question, though, is how many people they actually reach.
Mm-hmm. And well, that's a wonderful question because we understand that internet penetration is not that high in Thailand, and only 1.5% of the population, for example, is on a platform like Twitter. But when you have people that are mobilizing a campaign such as the, for example, Vote No campaign, does it not have the possibility of undermining people's belief in the institutions of Thai democracy, whether they're campaigning for this online or offline?
Well, as many of you know, Thai politics in recent years have gone quite nasty and controversial ever since the military coup of 2006 and even before. But this controversy or this polarization has now gone online, even though to a much lesser extent than, let's say, by the press or other media.
Mm-hmm. Saksit, I have a question. The media obviously has a big role to play in influencing people's opinions, and obviously they are, in tune with what's happening on social media. So isn't social media still important, even though it's only accessible, the internet, in 3 out of 20 households?
Of course, the role of social media and the internet has a place in the election and also in politics. And you rightly said with the mainstream media, and you have to bear in mind that the mainstream media in Thailand is actually not doing its job very well. So,
what do you mean?
Where social media takes place. Yes.
What do you mean it's not doing its job well?
Well, the basic journalism rules like being neutral and objective, and also being fair, and just actually report facts, not just reproduce quotes of politicians and other important figures. That is actually a stigma that has stuck to Thai media for a long time.
Now, I want to ask you one more question, and then I actually want to draw Clotilde into this. We understand that there is this Vote No campaign, and there's this premise that maybe the Thai government is too corrupt, people don't want them to vote. Can you explain to us what this is all about?
Yes, the group behind the No Vote campaign is actually an ultra-nationalist group called, ironically, the People's Alliance for Democracy, also known as the Yellow Shirts, who have campaigned against former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra because he was, well, that's a fact, he was corrupt. And they are now out on the streets because of other things, like now they are protesting the current government of Prime Minister Abhisit Wejjajiwa, which is actually an opponent to Thaksin. And basically, they were coming out because of border conflicts with Cambodia, and they are now coming out with this No Vote campaign to actually blanket blaming the whole political system. They say the whole democracy we have right now is useless. All politicians are corrupt. That's why they are showing animals. And actually, yeah, they're undermining actually the democratic system we have right now, and they want to get not to get rid of it or to have some kind of change, but not this democracy we have right now in Thailand.
So what do you think, Mathilde? I mean, what happens when people don't believe in the democracy that they have at all?
Well, basically, it also all comes from that media situation. When you have media that are actually free and able to report and not practicing self-censorship, because a lot more, just tell me if I'm mistaken, but a lot more reporters are self-censoring themselves because you have tons of taboos. And there is that lèse majesté law when you just
can't say anything about the king.
You can't. I mean, the video you showed, the first video you showed, comes from the website Prachatai. The woman who funded that website is accused of lèse majesté.
Right.
And he's still accused of lèse majesté. You have someone who got like 13 years in jail because he posted 3 comments to criticize the
13
king.
Years.
13.
So this is a really good point, because that means that there's sort of a chilling effect on the media.
Yeah.
Here's a question that I just want to make sure we all have clarified for our viewers, and I want to make sure it's been said. You know, it is mandatory to vote in Thailand, correct?
Yes.
Saksith? So that means this is basically people trying to take power back into their hands, and you know, by protesting at the actual poll. Is that a good strategy? What do you think?
To protest?
To not vote.
To not
abstain.
vote. And if you know, like in that kind of elections, being in Thailand or even being in France.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, in France, we would love, for example, to see a third party that would come up. We say we're not happy with the 2 parties that are there, and we want something else.
Yeah.
And actually, they can do it. But it's true that it's a real mess, and especially when you have the power of the media thrown into that. And it's really a battle between like yellow and red, and every time you write something about it, there will be a battle between them.
So Saksith, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, Clotilde is right. The media is practicing self-censorship, and as you rightly said, this is because of the lèse majesté law that can be punished with up to 15 years of prison if you are even vaguely criticizing the monarchy. And I will not go too deep into this issue, because I may get sentenced myself into trouble by actually talking too much about this. And since I'm here in Bangkok, I'm right in the lines then.
Yes. Well, this is, we don't want to get you into trouble, but this is a very interesting subject. And I want to actually move from the monarchy to the military, because we know that the previous prime minister was ousted by the military when he was overseas on a trip. Now it's his sister that is running and under the banner of the red shirts. Do you think that if she seems to be gaining traction, that the military might step in again?
The military is actually pretty nervous about the outcome of the election, because Yingluck is, if the polls are to be trusted, leading with a wide margin, and it's actually just a matter of how many the opposition party will get seats. And the scenarios post-elections are actually unimaginable, or not, or difficult to predict actually, because the military itself is unpredictable, because they are repoliticized since the coup, and they were actually not supposed to be repoliticized before the coup.
Saksith, quick question. We have a tweet coming in from Katie Goddard saying social media is not just Twitter, and in general, in their opinion, it can be hugely effective in elections, depending on how it's used. Now, we know that Yingluck, is using it in a more kind of approaching way with her community. She's uploading personal tweets, personal pictures of her and her family, whereas Abesit is kind of being more withdrawn, and people are saying that their approach to using social media might be indicative of their actual approach to the campaign. What would you say?
Not only indicative of their approach to the campaign, but also they reflect kind of their personalities, with the Yingluck being a folksier type, good with people, and also, well, people love her. And well, Apisi, the prime minister, he said not to be very comfortable with going into the voters. If you actually look at the pictures from the campaign, Apisi going and meeting common people, he might seem a little bit nervous. While the Yingluck, she's embracing her electorate, she's embracing her supporters, and this is reflected also in the social media aspect.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm looking at her Facebook page right now, and as you look at it, she's got a lot of very interesting, compelling photos. She even apparently wears a head covering when she goes into areas where people have more conservative beliefs. So she's obviously got something compelling that's going on there. Suxit, thank you so much for sharing your insights on this particular story with us.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Appreciate it. Clotilde, before we move on, I just think that this is so fascinating. I'm just wondering if you could give us a final thought on what happens in the wake of an election like this. If media is afraid to report, how likely is it that people are going to get the kind of leadership that they want?
That's one of the problems that we see, like in an election that is problematic by itself because it is just happening. And being in Thailand or in other countries, and you feel the nervosity. And what is very striking is that now the first reflex of any government that is afraid of an election is just to shut down the internet.
Shut down.
You close it.
Even our guest was scared.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and rightfully so. 15 years is a long time to be in jail for making a comment.
Right.
Thanks for that point. We're actually going to dive deeper into this idea of shutting down the internet. But before we do, you know you can follow this story on our website at stream.aljazeera.com. There you're going to find more videos and links to some of our top stories, including this one on the Thai elections. Ahmed, before we get into the next story, tell us a little more about what people have been saying to us online.
Well, today we want to focus on one particular story that we've been talking about online. It's a story that we've been following of a 190-day strike in South Korea in a place called Busan, where there was an announcement by a company named the Hanjin Company to lay off 400 people, which is 1/3 of their workforce. Now, we've been relying on our community to keep us across this story through live video, through tweets and posts, and one person in particular right here created this Storify to kind of document where the story has gotten us right now. And in it, let's just jump to one of the elements. This is Jin Suk. She is a 51-year-old union labor leader right here making a heart shape with her hands. She has staged her sit-in at the top of this 35-meter high crane for over 6 months, if you can imagine, braving the cold. And now the story updates that we got today is, as you can see, she's cheerful there, but who's not cheerful is a congressman there who went to the actual CEO of the company, this gentleman right here, and told him this is now becoming a matter of human rights. And there's a lot more attention being placed on this story. So this is members of the Korean Human Rights Committee visiting the crane. These are all twit pics that were shared with us from the user who's created the Storify. Amnesty International is watching this. I would imagine that your organization might be as well. What do you quickly make of, using these tools to share this story?
Well, first of all, using that kind of tool, and I'm a huge addict of Storify, but using this tool is really important. As you can see, even if, like we were saying, even if in Thailand, they don't really use YouTube or Twitter because of the penetration rate.
Right.
You were able to talk about it today.
Right.
And it just it's just a way of getting it out.
Right.
Now,
I'm going to have to move on just because I want to get to one tweet, which is coming from AimHigh2400 that highlights this, the use of this tool, because it says, we learned how to use Storify from LiveJ. He's a really good teacher. Now, who's LiveJ? He's someone who created this.
Something to us before.
Yeah, this Storify several weeks ago. So as you can see, he's now teaching them how to use this tool, which is an important tool, as Clotilde was saying. And now you also have the opportunity to help us put together these stories using the same tools we use and our guests in Korea are using. It's called Storify, and it pulls together elements such as videos, photos, tweets, audio from across social media, put together a story for us, and if we like it, we may take it to air. So if you're not familiar with Storify, I'm going to play a very quick video to teach you how you can share stories with us.
Storify is a narrative tool for the social media age. Log in with your Twitter account. Search what people are saying on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, pretty much anywhere on the web. Then rearrange them any way you like. Add your own explanations and thoughts, and publish your story for the world to see. Share those stories with us, and they, and you, might just wind up in the stream. With only 3% of Afghans able to access the internet, the high-speed network built in the provincial city of Jalalabad seems far-fetched. But it's not. The Fab5 project, that's partly self-funded by group members and partly by a grant from the U.S. National Science Foundation, helps Afghans create an open-source network using household rubbish, effectively. If you take a look at my screen, you'll see two gentlemen sitting basically on top of a roof and building something that seems to have been jerry-rigged together. Basically, these systems require two elements. One is a reflector and the other is a router. Now, the reflectors can be made of various household items, and the routers can be made from, more things that you would buy that are more commercially available. And the way the system works is each setup becomes a node on a new internet system. So rather than being, dependent upon an internet that could be shut down by a central resource, this is a completely distributed open source network. If you have enough nodes, you shut down any 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 of them, that internet keeps on flourishing. To talk to us a little bit more about this story, joining us now from via Skype from Cambridge, Massachusetts, it's Amy Sun. She's the president and founder of Fab Folk, a nonprofit committed to building technical capacities in communities around the world. She's also leading the Fab 5 project in Jalalabad. Amy, thank you so much for being with us. Did I explain correctly how this works?
You got it right on, and thanks for having me on.
Wonderful. It's a pleasure to have you. Now, we've been seeing some controversy about this subject because there was a New York Times article that came out recently that was talking about efforts that the United States government has been making in trying to bring the internet as a tool to challenge autocratic regimes. Are you guys part of a broader U.S. government effort?
Well, if we are, I haven't been told so. And there's me and another guy, so I'm pretty sure it should have made it to me by now. To explain where this came from a little more, we're part of something called Fab Labs, and they are field on-site technology development, like community centers. And so the whole point to this is to enable people with access to tools that you kind of think in a more perfect world we would all have, but we don't quite yet. And this is not sort of third world, first world. This is even just where little differences that you might have in your own neighborhood. So all we have, for example, are laser cutters, which once you use one of these, you sort of wish that you had one in your home. And so if you imagine maybe 25 years ago, this is the difference between having a printer at home and having a printer at Kinko's. So what we've done is jump-started the ability for people to have access to these tools. And what we want to see is what people make. And so in about 2002, starting in about 2002, people have started to want to make communication structures and communication infrastructures in areas where, say, businesses or governments or municipalities hadn't quite brought it out yet. And in Afghanistan, it's instead of being like in 2002, it was a project to track sheep and reindeer in northern Norway. And in Afghanistan, in Jalalabad, it turned into a project where the needs are so much more important.
Amy, if I can just reference this program that the State Department and the Pentagon a couple years ago spent $50 million to create a kind of covert telephone network or a cell phone network in Afghanistan. And perhaps, to kind of ask the question that Derek asked, I want to just reference a blog post that you wrote, because you even clarified on this blog post that the Fab 5 project in Afghanistan was not one of the secretly funded projects described in a New York Times article. But then, a couple of sentences later, you say, however, the urgency and significance of the project are the same. So I guess my question is, since you're getting funding from the NSF, the National Science Foundation, which is a government body, are you not then still in some way part of this movement by the U.S. government?
Well, larger conspiracy theories aside, it's I can't speak to whether or not the
funding. I'm just wondering about the funding.
Well, so what the National Science Foundation funded was investigation in how the pedagogy of technology, how people learn technology and how technology teaches them.
Okay.
So, Clotilde, I want to get your thoughts in this, specifically this idea of a new internet, or basically guerrilla internet in a box, so to speak. What are the implications for that when you have governments that have shown a willingness to shut down the internet where possible?
Well, it could be an alternative. Honestly, it's just when you have an internet that you can shut down and actually you can connect somehow not through that network that has been shut down. Yeah. It's just a solution. For now, it's just a solution. It could be a solution for any. Can you imagine this? Any reporter on the ground that is just relying on another network and can actually give you that information. It could be really, really, really helpful, I guess.
Well, Amy, I want to get your thoughts on Clotilde's point. I mean, have you considered the political implications of what you're building?
I think it's easy and desirable to think about larger implications, but they don't. They're sort of just guesswork for folks like me. I don't live in Jalalabad. I don't know what the reality is on the ground every day. Jalalabad is not a place where there are riots or mortars landing in the street on a constant basis. What they're looking for, what we think that they're looking for, was a way to have services in places that were either very expensive or very difficult to have services.
And why pick Afghanistan?
So we have about 100 labs all over the world. Afghanistan is and again, our interest is what people make if they can make it, what problems people will want to solve if they're fully able to solve problems themselves. And so as a result, these labs are generally in kind of strange and difficult places in whatever sense that they are, be they resource limited or, say, conflict limited. Like
Amy, I just want to share a couple of answers to the question Derek just asked that seem to be coming into us online. Basque Matt is saying, maybe this is why Afghanistan, open technologies allowing countries like Afghanistan with low access to leapfrog traditional means of communications and platforms. And then LM Oliva is kind of echoing that point by saying the mesh concept can be robust regardless of what it's actually made out of. So it can be near impervious to an off switch. Is that the point?
Well, that's true for the mesh architecture, and I'd say that's why the Afghan network is built that way. That's and the mesh and the self-healing ad hoc mesh structure. Because one of the problems in Jalalabad was intermittent power. We knew that we wanted to have a network that was didn't have issues with sort of the various hops going up and down over time. And so the fact that this is, this lies adjacent to and dovetails nicely with sort of efforts to go around governments or to go around, call it legitimate telecom. That's sort of
people are calling it cyber warfare, right?
I don't know that I would necessarily take it that far. It's you can make weapons or tools out of anything. Most of what we've done, so Fab5 to an extent is just a big success story about having enough critical mass in open source software and open source hardware that you can have this very complex, mesh routing is not an easy thing to do, but like other people for free for like odd reasons have figured out how to do it, and you get to just like turn it on and run it. And I'd say that's our biggest our biggest success is that to spread the knowledge or the knowledge that you can implement such a thing if that's what you need.
Amy, thank you so much for taking the time to explain this to us. We really appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
Thanks. Amy, it's been great. Clotilde, it's wonderful having you here. I want to continue this conversation with just a minute. We're going to talk more about these ideas of the internet and open internet shortly. Join us at stream.aljazeera.com. Use the hashtag AJStream to keep in touch. We'll see you online. Hi, and welcome back to the post show. We've been talking about ideas of the internet and having an open internet. And right now we're very lucky to have Clotilde with us, who is really worked on internet freedom issues for Journalists Without Borders. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about this concept, but to get it from another angle. Let's say you're the government in Afghanistan right now. Should you be any more or less afraid of these kinds of mesh networks as, say, the Taliban?
Why?
Well, in a nutshell, once people have set up an internet that operates in a nodal system, when we say mesh, it means that it's based on all these nodes, it's a web of its own, you can't shut it down. Now, we've heard that the Taliban has been shutting down the mobile carriers there. So periodically, they'll maybe turn off the sets or they'll attack mobile networks, which is why the U.S. spent that $50 million creating a mobile network that was based on U.S. bases. And the idea that some people are speculating is, well, they do this so that you can't make phone calls when this happens. At the same time, there's a lot of speculation that the Afghan government has got its own internal troubles. There are a lot of questions around the previous elections. So if you have people starting to create these independent networks, obviously it's a threat to insurgent groups like the Taliban, but could it be a threat to the Afghan government itself?
Well, it's a threat to generally people who have something to reproach themselves, because they don't want people to talk about it. And just one example, if this would be at another scale and more distributed, or they are even in Afghanistan, and especially in Afghanistan. Today, we had 2 French journalists that have been released, and they were kidnapped by the Taliban, and they stayed 18 months kidnapped with them, and they got released today. Maybe having another way of connecting with even with them, we would have news from what was going on. It was 2 months, 3 months that we didn't know anything about their whereabouts or anything. And it's just when you have that kind of thing where you're not dependent of something, of course it can be a threat, because what she was saying is that you build a technology and then some people transform that either as a weapon or as a tool.
Yes.
I mean, the way I see things, it's really about control, and I think that's what you were trying to highlight. Is it right that the U.S. government, granted that they're, have a war in Afghanistan, that they set up this network, of even just the mobile network, obviously for their operations, based on a U.S. base? Because sure, they were doing it because the Taliban could have immediately cut communications, but should the U.S. government have control? I mean, there are a lot of questions about whether the U.S. should, be going into Pakistan and having military operations. Well, what about being in control of their telecommunications?
Well, but I think that's what's so interesting about this particular project, because if the project does what it says it does, then no one has control.
Yeah, no one can take it down, because if you get enough nodes, presumably it's impossible to take it down.
Exactly, and I think it's really intriguing, because now we're seeing so much dialogue around, the liberation movements online. Not simply let's use Facebook to organize, but you've got people who are, the quote-unquote cyber activist world. Now you've got people creating independent networks. It's like this whole idea of an open source culture is going to a whole other level, and it makes it challenging if you are a central authority.
But I think it is very good, because when you have governments that want to own the internet the way they want to, I mean, we published that list of countries that we rank as internet enemies and countries under surveillance. You get European countries in countries under surveillance. And because France, for example, is trying to impose something online and just cut your connection. If you're not doing something that is seen as legal or what, you cut your connection. And there is no trial, no nothing. You just cut. You get 3 emails to say be careful, and then after, you have no access anymore.
Well, a U.S. Senator, Joe Lieberman, a couple of months ago actually introduced legislation that would offer what they call an internet kill switch here in the United States, which would effectively do the same thing.
Right. Go ahead.
No, so having those nodes where no one can be in control of it will just give the governments and the people you rely on not even the envy to control the internet, because it's just not possible, and stop even trying.
I think it's fascinating, because we talk about democracy and the democratization of the world, and a lot of times people think of it in terms of the ballot. But if you go to many countries, you'll find that just having the opportunity to vote does not a democracy make. I mean, if the candidates that you're voting for are not representative of your interests, is that democratic? And what this is doing is it's starting to create almost like the infrastructure, the backbone, the skeleton of a democratic internet infrastructure.
We were supposed to talk about this earlier in the pre-show, but the Google discussion got really heated, so we didn't get to it. But I want to mention it because it relates. We were talking about the issue of cyber warfare, and if all of this constitutes a kind of, saber rattling that's seeming to occur that used to happen in kind of meetings or diplomatic circles, that's now happening online. So the State Department's program, where they invested $2 million in packaging the internet essentially in a suitcase to be brought across a border covertly, has been getting a lot of attention. And today, or I believe yesterday, the Iranian former intelligence minister who was fired, his name is Haidar Moslehi, and then came back, now has said, you know what, we're prepared to take on whatever it is that the U.S. government is trying to do with this internet in a suitcase, and even purported that they were aware of this before it made news in the media. Now, we don't know if this is saber-rattling, but it's interesting because obviously governments are taking these initiatives and these programs, whether covert or public, very seriously.
Well, they have to, because I think information is such a crucial element of how a government works, and that's why one of the first things any autocratic regime does is they establish state television, state newspaper. They control the media, because if you have a real independent media, it's very difficult to have a despotic regime.
And more, this is coming back to what I was saying earlier, but more and more, even with independent media, so-called independent media, the journalists as bloggers just fear. There is also like a lot of education that you need to get there, because you don't know what you can publish and to what extent you're in your right when you publish something. And journalists and bloggers are just asking themselves the same questions. It's just like, if I publish this, what will be the consequence?
Do you have any cue as to how much time we have left? Because I want to bring up the Swedish story that we saw.
Well, I was literally just about to go to that, because that's why I'm kind of harping on this idea of what are the implications of it, because you have a lot of places where people are trying to retrench, governments are trying to retrench from, openness of the internet and openness of access. But then we also see examples where you have media actually shifting the way they operate in this new world and making it more inclusive. And we have an example of an actual Swedish newspaper called Noran. It's a large regional daily in the north of Sweden that's basically opened up its newsroom, and they're allowing people to participate in open editorial meetings, whereby you can communicate live on their blog with a journalist from the newspaper Noran and help to determine what issues they're going to cover. And before we get into our own angle on this, I'm curious of your opinion, Clotilde. What are the implications when media starts to open itself up to a dialogue with its viewership?
Well, first of all, the reader will get involved in this, which is very important, because why newspapers are not popular anymore? Simply because the journalists, they're writing for other journalists. They're not writing for you. They're just like, I'll be first on this one, and you won't get that information. I mean, this is a rule, and we all know that when you are in the media, you like to be first, and you love to be first every time you want to publish something. But at the end of the day, you just totally forget about the reader. And getting people involved, being online or being like in the newsroom, and having some of your followers or more closely followers that are coming over just to tell you, here is what I think about your stories and everything, and gather all of this can only benefit.
Well, it is benefiting them, because they've seen a rise in both their online usership and in their print usership.
Noran.
Noran, I believe this is their website. And also, just to touch on the not too finer point, is that's exactly what we do at AJ Stream. I mean, a lot of what we cover is sourced from our audience, because we have a feeling of, well, we're going to present news. What is it that you want to know about?
And a big part, I don't know if you know this, Clotilde, but a big part of when we were creating the show, a couple months back, we had a couple open editorial meetings ourselves where we used a live, kind of webcam, and we set it up. There were 20 of us in the room, but in reality, we were crowdsourcing about 150 ideas or 150 brains. So maybe too many chefs spoil the broth, but the reason I was thinking of this is because Baskmat, who tweeted in during the live show, just sent us this. Now, this is a bit too utopian, but let's see what you think. Information is not owned by anyone rather. All information should be open and accessible by all. I mean, is that true?
I think Baskmat is making a very interesting point. Baskmat, please send us your bank account information. We'd love to have it open to all.
All information. Well, in the article that you were referencing, but the reason is, in the article that you were referencing about Sweden and this kind of new approach, there's this one line that to me really rings true, and I'd be curious your opinion, considering, Reporters Without Borders. It says transparency, it's right here, transparency is the new objectivity. Is that true? Because I agree with that to a certain extent.
Well, it's transparency, objectivity. You also have honesty, basically, and transparency is a way of showing your honesty. So, and when you're honest as a reporter and telling, this is what I saw, I didn't see everything, I was in that precise city with that precise people, and I was not able to go there, or just did this. And this is the best way of having credibility, and your readers understand exactly what you're doing, and not coming up with like huge theories and you're like, this should be like this and this should be like this.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think transparency works great for journalists. It's lifeblood, but does it work in all contexts?
Like government, can
yeah,
it be
do you
that
really want your government to be transparent about everything? Do you want to be transparent about everything?
Well,
I think it's great to talk about, but in practice, it's a whole other animal.
Well, Al Jazeera launched their transparency, our transparency unit, and then the New York Times considered following suit. But I think it's an interesting question for journalists to address. Not to be too inside journalist, but I'm glad we got you to comment on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think this whole idea of, transparency, the idea of an internet that is so robust, so distributed, so open source, that it can't be brought down, all of these are going to change the relationship between journalists, audiences, and governments as well. Kotil, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Ahmed, today was wonderful, as always. Thank you for joining us today in our post show. We will look forward to seeing you again for our regular show tomorrow. But remember, you can always continue the conversation with us online using the hashtag AJStream. We will see you online.